This is the first video in the two-part series of Designing Your First Quilt. Be sure to watch part 2 following this video. In this video, we'll go through the steps of designing a very basic quilt. When starting a new project, we'll be here on the Start New Quilt tab. This is where you'll make your layout selection for your quilt. But before we do that, it's important that we name our project. Remember from video 2, naming your project creates the file that is stored on your computer. If we don't create the file, none of our work will get saved. So to name my project, I can either click the Save button here or choose File from the menu, then Save or Save As. By default, my project is saved in the Projects folder, as you can see here. I'm going to type My First Quilt as the file name, then click Save. Notice at the top of the EQ Mini window that the name changed from Untitled to myfirstquilt.eqm. Now let's choose our layout. I'll click through the 4 options here to see what styles are available. When I hover my mouse over a layout, the tooltip gives me more information about the layout. For this video, I'll keep it very simple. So let's go back up to Horizontal Layout and choose the 3x3 layout with sashing. On the Adjust Layout tab, we're given options to change the layout, sashing, and block size. Watch how the layout preview changes as I adjust the settings in the palette. At the top of the palette, you can see the size of the center layout, not including the borders. At the bottom of the screen, you can see the size of the quilt with borders. I don't really know what my design is going to look like yet, so I may have to revisit this tab later to make adjustments. So let's leave everything as it is. On the Edit Borders tab, we're given a palette of options for adding and adjusting borders. This layout already has a 2-inch long horizontal border. I'll add a new border to the outside of the current border by clicking the Add button in the palette. Notice how this new border is gray in the layout preview. This shows us that it's the selected border and the palette options are reflecting the settings of that border. I'm going to increase this border's width to 4 inches all the way around. When I click the Style drop-down menu, I can choose a different border style. Watch the layout as I click through these options. Let's leave this border as a long horizontal. Remember, the palette only displays the setting for the selected border. Watch the palette change as I click between the 2 borders. Now that we have our layout set, this will be a great time to add our current layout to the sketchbook, so it's saved in our project. So click the red button with the arrow to add the current layout to our sketchbook. Click the View Sketchbook button, and in the Quilt section, you'll see the blank layout. Click Close to put the sketchbook away. Click the Design Quilt tab. On the left of the screen, you can see the quilt with borders, but the layout's empty. On the right of the screen, the Set Block tool is selected, which displays the Sketchbook Blocks palette. If I change tools, this palette goes away. Since we haven't added any blocks to our project yet, there's nothing in the palette. To add blocks to the project, we need to go to the Block Library. I can either click on the Libraries menu, then choose Block Library, or simply click this button at the top of the Blocks palette. In video 3, you learned how to view and select blocks in the library, so I'll only touch on the details briefly. EQ Mini comes with 5 block libraries. I can use the scroll bar to see them. I can click the plus and minus signs to open and close the library, and I can click on a style to display the blocks in the viewer. To add a block to my project sketchbook, I can select it, then click the Add to Sketchbook button. For this project though, I'll select multiple blocks because I really don't know what I want to do yet. I like these antique mosaic blocks, so I'm going to select all of the blocks to put into my project sketchbook. To select all, press your keyboard Control key and A at the same time. That's Control A. On a Mac, it's Command A. Once they are selected, click Add to Sketchbook. All the blocks in this library have disappeared, but only temporarily, so you know they've been added to your project. I'll get a few more random blocks before closing the library. All of those blocks are now part of my project. If I close this project right now and reopened it later, these same blocks would still be here in my sketchbook. With the Set Block tool selected, I can click in any space and set a block. Blocks can be set in the layout, sashing, cornerstones, and in most border spaces. Select the block from the palette and click in a space. To set multiple blocks at a time, hold down the Control key while clicking. Again, it's the Command key for Mac users. All the spaces will fill with that block. To set blocks in alternating spaces in the layout, hold down the Alt key or Option key for Mac users and click in the quilt. The Rotate and Flip tools allow you to do just that. The Rotate tool will rotate a block 90 degrees with each click. The Flip tool will flip a block 180 degrees, or mirror it along a vertical axis. I don't think I want these baskets in my quilt, so I'll Alt-click or Option-click a new block to replace the baskets. I'll click the Add to Sketchbook button to put this version of my quilt in the sketchbook. Now let's look at the blocks. Both of these blocks are built on a 4-patch grid. You can see it by just looking at them. So to make easy math when cutting patches, we should set our block size to a multiple of 4. Let's go back to the Adjust Layout tab and make the adjustment. Currently, the block size is set to 10 inches, which isn't a multiple of 4. We can do 8 inches or 12 inches to make our math easier. I think we should do 12 inches, so I'll bump the dimensions up a bit here. While we're here, I don't think I want sashing, so I'm going to get rid of that too. So it looks like my quilt center is 36 inches square and my finished quilt size is 48 inches without binding. Let's add a small binding on the Edit Borders tab. With this outside border selected, I'll click Add at the top of the palette. I'll change the style to mitered and the size to 1/4 inch. Now my finished quilt size is 48.5 inches square. Click the Add to Sketchbook button. Don't worry about getting too many versions of your quilt in your sketchbook. It's best to update your project by clicking the Add to Sketchbook button after you've made changes to the quilt. Notice we aren't clicking the Save button. Our project is already created. We know this because there's a name up here at the top of the screen. Each time we click the Add to Sketchbook button, the whole project gets saved automatically. This is the end of Part 1. Please watch Designing Your First Quilt Part 2 to complete the series.